Now, as a photographer, as a model, as a makeup artist, one of the things that a lot of creatives strive for is being published. And, that really makes sense. It's kind of a culmination of what it is you do. And to reach this level of, a team of people feeling like your work is good enough to publish it is something that a lot of people put their pride into, and they put a lot of weight into it. Now, the question really is, in modern day publishing, does it really hold the value that it always has or that it once has? Now, in this sector that we're in these days, and mind you, I am just the messenger, so do not get upset with me, but a lot of these publications are known as vanity magazines. Now, essentially where that term came from is that these publications essentially require people to submit their images to them, and then they pick from those images and they produce it. So the vanity part comes in that you have people that are creating the work, submitting their own work to be published, to then be excited that they got published. So vanity comes from being vain. Again, I'm just the messenger. I'm just saying that's what a lot of these publications are called these days. So there's a lot of creatives that put a lot of weight into being published into these vanity magazines. Now, before I dive deep into what I really want to talk about in this video, let me first just kind of talk about the process of how this goes. You create work, you submit your work to these publications. Sometimes you can submit for free. Sometimes there's a fee. Sometimes there's a fee to have a full spread. Sometimes there's a fee to be featured on the cover. But the gist of it is, as creatives, you submit these images to these publications. They then select the ones that they want to select. They publish them. And then you, as the creative who submitted them, you generally then have to buy the publication that you've been published in. And so that part of it has always been a problem for me, because you have these publications, these companies, these entities that would not exist without images being submitted. So you're doing all of this work. You're submitting images to these publications, who then turn around and profit off of the images that you submit. They don't pay you anything for these images. In fact, sometimes you have to pay them to submit. So they don't pay you anything for these images. They profit off of the images. And then guess what? When your images get published, you have to turn around and buy that publication. How is that something to be excited about? The practice in and of itself just seems terrible to me. And where I find it interesting is that so many times creatives get so upset when somebody wants them to do some work for them, provide images, take pictures, be a model, whatever the case, and they offer to pay them in exposure. Creatives get so upset about that. But if you stop for a second and think about these vanity magazines, that's exactly what you're doing. You are working for exposure. Now, the interesting thing about the exposure is that a lot of these publications likely aren't bought by anyone other than the team who worked on the images who submitted to the publication. So there's really not a lot of exposure there. Sure, you're published, but how much weight does it really hold? Now, I am not here to tell you not to get excited if you get published. That is solely up to you. And if you feel like that is an accomplishment, an achievement, and you want to be excited, if you want to scream from the top of a mountain how excited you are that you got published, by all means, do that. I would never sit here and say, don't be excited. You're a fool for being excited. But one of the goals for me on my channel in 2024 is to talk about some topics that a lot of people maybe don't want to talk about. Maybe people don't want to think about them. People don't want to admit certain things And I want to have these conversations because I think in our industry, these conversations are important. And so if you want to be excited, cool. But in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, in my opinion, if someone is having to submit their own work, potentially pay to submit this work, and then have to pay for the very publication that they're published in, I just don't see that as being something to praise. I like to look at it this way, and maybe this will put it into perspective, and maybe this will help you look at it differently. Think of a high school basketball team. Just about every high school, if they have sports, they have a basketball team. You're going to have people that are going to try out for the team. Now imagine at this particular high school, everybody that tries out for the basketball team are not good at basketball at all. They love to play, but they're not good at basketball at all. And if they played against any school that had even a decent amount of talent, they would get crushed. But that high school still has to assemble a basketball team. So even though everyone that has tried out for the team are terrible at basketball, they're still going to pick a team of people so that they can have a team. Now, in that case, if you're one of those people, you could argue that, hey, I still got picked. There were 25 people that tried out. Only 10 could make the cut. I still got picked. Cool. That is something to be happy about. But the reality is the team had to put a team together. They were going to pick 10 people no matter what, no matter how good you were, no matter if you could play basketball or not, they were going to pick 10 people no matter what. So just because you made the team doesn't mean that you're good. It doesn't mean that as a team, you're going to go out and win games. Most likely you're going to go out and get crushed. Yeah, you made the team, but they took the best of what they had. And if they had 25 people that were terrible, they took the 10 best out of those terrible people. Now, I'm not saying anyone's images are terrible, but my point is these magazines are going to put out a publication every month, no matter what. It doesn't matter if they get great images, good images, or mediocre images. They're going to put out a publication every month because that's how they make their money. And they prey off of the fact that if you get published, you're going to buy that publication. They know that. And if you work with a makeup artist, they're going to buy that publication. And if you were the model, the photographer, whatever the case, all of you are going to want to buy that publication because you can have something that's printed to say, hey, look, I was published. And most of these magazines, they print on demand. So it's not like they're printing 1,000 of them and selling them. They print them when you order them, probably from the same place where you could literally just print your own magazine of your own work. So again, I'm not saying don't be excited, but we have to be real here. Being published in a vanity magazine doesn't carry a ton of weight because they're going to put that publication out no matter what. So if you submit your image this month and you just so happen to be the best out of a bunch of mediocre images, guess what? You still get published. And that's cool. That's cool. But in my opinion, that's not something to truly tout. That's not something to brag about. That's not something that's going to carry weight. Now, if I'm going to play the devil's advocate from a client perspective, sure, there could be some weight there. You know, if a client looks at your profile and it's like, oh, I've been published and you can show them this print, they don't know any different. And at the end of the day, that means something, right? You know, me as a photographer, if I think there's no weight, that's fine, but I'm not the one booking you. I'm not the one paying you. So if your clients look at that and they're like, hey, I work with this published photographer, I work with this published model, this published makeup artist, there's some weight there. So if that's your motivation, great. Great. But I think we need to be real. And getting published in a vanity magazine is not like being published in Vogue. It's not like being published in Vanity Fair or Glamour. I don't know any other ones off the top of my head. But I like to look at it this way. If I can't go to a Barnes and Noble and pick up the publication off of the newsstand, I'll let you fill in the rest.